Good morning, everyone. As Betsy shared, this is our first Tier 1 coaching series chat, and it will be a series of 3. So today's focus is really going to be on PBIS integration with attendance and implementation at the Tier 1 level of both PBIS and attendance. And then Sabrina, I don't know if you want to say hi before we get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
So as we get started, we just want to take a moment to welcome everybody and have a chance to kind of look around your desk and what is something either on your desk or in your office or classroom that makes you smile this morning. You can go ahead and just type that in the chat if you find something that makes you smile. So I don't know if any of our other team members can see the chat for me because I can't see it.
Yes,
To
we
share out
have.
what's
Pat said my kids' gifts. Stephanie said a picture of my grandbabies. Lakeisha said pictures of my family. Carrie said my new space cup. My Eric said my Yeti full of iced green tea.
my coffee on my desk does make me smile. And did you say there's a space pup?
Cup.
Pup. I thought you said pup. I
Yes.
was like, I have no idea what that is, but it would probably make me smile as well. I'm not sure if you can see it, but for me, it is similar to Kat's response, some artwork from my son that makes me smile with my sunshine today.
Brooke said I have a daily motivational note that I switch daily. Today says find what makes your heart smile.
Oh, that's perfect for today. Thanks, Brooke. Christy, thank you so much for sharing those for us in the chat. And please just, if there are other questions or anything, just jump in and interrupt and let
Okay.
us know. Thank you. So for the coaching series, just to give everyone some idea of what the whole series will cover, today's part, as we said, is going to be teaming and attendance integration at Tier 1. Then after break in January, we're going to hop back on and look at how we can support PBIS in the classroom and then lesson planning, which is a good, welcome back after the long break. Many teachers and school leaders are looking at, reteaching the expectations. We're going to cover that in January. And then in February, we're going to be looking at our data and how we can use that to support the implementation of disciplinary procedures. So that's just kind of an overview of the whole series for Tier 1. Specifically, today's objectives. We're going to look at the 10 PBIS critical elements and some of the new enhancements, as those are going to drive not only today's chat, but the 2 other chats in the series. We're then going to discuss the role of Tier 1 PBIS team at your schools and review key considerations for all team members. And then finally, Sabrina is going to take over and really highlight how PBIS and attendance can be integrated at the Tier 1 level at your schools. So just a reminder that the core principles of PBIS and RTI are the same, right? Just as all students are taught the academic core curriculum, students should also be taught the core curriculum for behavior. The PBIS expectations and rules comprise the school's core curriculum for behavior. Once the core curriculum is taught, both academic and behavior, we want to make sure that they're implemented with fidelity. Students who do not respond effectively to the core instruction, we then look at moving up into our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports. As we said for this coaching series, we're really going to be focusing on what supports all students. So here are the 10 critical elements for PBIS and that we're going to use to support all outcomes for students. Specifically for today's chat, we're going to be focusing on the critical element of the PBIS team. We'll be touching a little bit on expectations and rules when we show how attendance can be aligned with those, just like our recognition and rewards critical element with attendance as the focus. And then on the new enhancements, we're really going to be looking at the student and family engagement piece, because that's really where attendance will fold in with PBIS implementation. So we're going to take a little poll as we get started this morning to make sure that we're guiding the conversation for all of those of you in attendance. So what is your involvement with PBIS at your school? So as the poll pops up, you're either going to see I'm on the PBIS team at your school, I support PBIS as an administrator, I implement as the classroom teacher or support staff, or I support at the district level. So we see some poll responses coming in. So about half of us have participated already. So thank you so much for taking that poll. We'll give it a few more minutes. We're looking for maybe about a third of our participants still. So far, it does look like we have quite a few administrators who are supporting PBIS on our campuses, some district level staff that are supporting. I know for classroom teachers, 10 o'clock is really hard to join on a school day. So thank you to our teacher who is here with us today. And then quite a few PBIS team members, which could also be some classroom teachers as well. So I'll just give it about 2 more seconds. So about a third administrators and district level, and then the rest on the team. So thank you so much for sharing that feedback with us. As we continue to go through, we will keep your roles in mind. Do I have to close the poll? Christy, is that still popped up or has it come down?
It has come down.
Okay, thank you. I still see it on my screen. So all right, there we go. So we want to start off by really looking at the PBIS school team because that's going to be the heart of your Tier 1 implementation. As you are starting off the school year, we want to make sure that your team is not only established, but it's representative of all stakeholders. So the staff, the families, and the students. A big thing that we're finding a lot of PBIS teams are missing when they're getting started for the school year is really having that identified vision for PBIS and what it's going to look like at your school. Your PBIS team should be more than just like the popsicles and parties and the rewards piece, right? It really is a problem-solving team. So having that vision could be aligned to your school SIP goals, could be aligned to other district-wide goals, is going to be important for your team to really function effectively. Once you've identified a vision, your team should then have its own annual goals that they can be doing on their action planning, when they're looking at monthly data. It will drive the work that the team does throughout the year. It's going to ensure that there's implementation of all Tier 1 10 critical elements by really making sure that you have each of those pieces in place. And then, of course, the Tier 1 team really is providing training and coaching for staff. Every member of your Tier 1 team is a coach and may act in that role throughout the year. So they might be supporting classroom teachers with maybe some instructional things for behavior. Maybe they have new teachers to the school staff that have never implemented PBIS before, and they need some coaching on how to acknowledge appropriate behavior or how to teach the school-wide expectations. So making sure that those team members are able to serve in that coaching type of role. To consider your team, when you're making some considerations for your team, you want to think about who is on your team. And then most importantly, like we highlighted, how did they end up there? Oftentimes what might happen is that a school has been trained in PBIS 3, 5, 7 years before. And when your teams are being built each year, you have team members that either have been kind of voluntold to participate on the team, or maybe it's become like a committee that they sign up for, and maybe they've never even experienced PBIS training. So you really want to take some time as your school year begins to think about who is on the team, and then do they need any training? There is an overview linked in the slides and the handouts that gives you an overview for any new team members. We do also offer some online training that new team members or even teams that find themselves that nobody on the team has experienced PBIS training in quite a few years could attend. So we have like a simple Tier 1 revisited course that's an online skill module that schools and teams can use to kind of refresh some of the training if it's been a while. Then you want to think about what structures are in place on your team and how they're supporting your Tier 1 system. Most importantly, especially as we look toward attendance, right, are all stakeholders included? That family and student engagement piece is really going to be important as we look more at attendance later on in this chat. So when we think about effective strategies for teaming, communication and collaboration are really key. So you want to be thinking about the different strategies that will establish that. Setting ground rules for your Tier 1 team, right? Making sure that they have rules and norms and expectations. Then looking at your PBIS team activities and roles. Again, that is a linked item there that you can click on if your team needs to kind of review those. Make sure that they're agreed upon by all. They can rotate throughout the year. So you might have someone that's really versed in being able to pull the data. You might have someone that's really good at different behavior strategies. You may have multiple people that fill those roles, maybe an administrator and a guidance counselor. And they might rotate based on the need of what's being shown at your school and in your data. As we begin to fold in the conversation of attendance, you might even add an additional role that will have someone who is versed in the attendance part of your school. So sometimes there's an attendance clerk, maybe at some of our secondary schools, maybe there's a social worker or a homeschool liaison. That would be a great addition to your team if you're wanting to focus on attendance as well. And then, of course, making sure that you have systems in place that you can reach consensus as you're problem solving and working through different goals for your team. So when you're meeting monthly, really making sure that you have structure and routine. Some of the key things that we see the most successful teams doing is that they are compiling their monthly team data and sending it out to team members prior to the meeting. So when we're looking at monthly data, we're going to show you some of that on the next slide, right? Really your office discipline referrals, your attendance counts, having all of that in advance and setting up the norm with your team that team members will review that and come to the meeting ready to discuss, right? One thing we do not have in education is time, right? So we need to make the most effective use of our meeting time. So having team members come in ready with the data will help get that problem solving conversation started quickly. Then using an agenda to facilitate the meeting, making sure that the problem solving is happening. We're not getting off topic, which does sometimes happen, especially, with teachers, and there might be different things going on and conversation gets off track. So really using that agenda to help keep everyone focused. And then, of course, keeping notes throughout the meeting and really taking attendance of the members that are there. Not so much as like a gotcha kind of issue, especially if it is something that's established in your school, that it is a committee that your staff members attend. But you might need to make some changes. Maybe the meeting time conflicts with one of our building leadership teams, or maybe with, often IEP meetings might be scheduled at the same time as the team meeting. So you might need to make some changes to your team based on attendance if people aren't able to get there. And then a big thing that we're going to be talking about throughout the morning is how we can work smarter and not harder. As we fold in the piece of attendance, sometimes schools have a tier 1 attendance team and a tier 1 behavior team and a tier 1 academic team. And now you're attending 3 different meetings throughout your day or throughout your week or throughout your months, when we could maybe blend some of these meetings together. Because just like our students, right, academics impact behavior, which impact attendance, which impact academics, which impact behavior. So they all go together. So trying to bring some of these concepts together in one tier 1 meeting could really help make better use of your time. So we do have, again, 2 resources also linked for you there with the sample agenda and minutes if you need something as a guide, as well as a Working Smarter team matrix where you can lay out the different committees that you have at your school and the different teams you have at your school, identify where there might be some overlap and where you might be able to bring some teams together to really streamline the work that you're doing and make it more focused. So as I said before, right, having that monthly data handy for your teams prior to the meeting. So in that first column, you're going to see the screening data tools, right? And then, of course, establishing some decision rules for your school and your district. And down at the bottom in green is that tier 1 foundational piece that we're looking at for this series. And I wanted to highlight for you today where that attendance with your early warning indicators is already going to be part of your tier 1 PBIS data that you're pulling monthly. So easily can be folded into the conversation at your tier 1 PBIS team. Then as you progress monitor, you're also looking at attendance to see how your outcomes and your goals are working. So you're already kind of doing the work, but we're going to really show you how to implement it and integrate it further. So just some reminders about how to ensure a strong tier 1 overall. Excuse me. So first, again, reminding that your expectations and rules should drive everything that happens at your school and really making sure they're developed with your staff and input from all. Having a solid teaching and lesson plans for your school staff and all staff being taught those expectations and modeling them and reinforcing them. Making sure you have effective discipline procedures, noting what the consequences are, and then of course that key piece is that data system. But where does all of our attendance fit in with how we ensure strong tier one? I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sabrina now to show how that integration of our tier one PBIS team and attendance can work together. Sabrina?
Yes, thanks so much, Lauren. And that is an excellent question. How does it all really fit together? So remember that, again, when we look at attendance, attendance is behavior. And so we're already addressing behavior through PBIS. So it does make sense for us to also include attendance as well. So again, we've got a nice mix of folks today. I really appreciate that. A nice mix of having some administrators, some classroom teachers, a lot of district support staff. Take a moment and think about how you would describe attendance at your school or in your district. And then please just type it in the chat. What's one word that you would use to describe attendance either historically or currently? I know it's the beginning of the year or even as a district. So take a moment, think about it, and please type it in the chat. Okay, and consistent. We're making progress. It's a priority. That's awesome. And we're going to touch on that in just a moment. So keep that word in mind, priority. Excellent. Okay, great. Priority. All right.
Important, better than last year,
Yes.
but still not great.
Okay.
Needs improvement. Progress needs improvement.
Okay, so when we're thinking about this, and that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today as well, is ways that we can have an impact on attendance and hopefully again get it to closer to what we'd like to see. And one of the very first things that we can do is make sure that our expectations align with all of our values, right? And especially as it comes to attendance, just making sure that we are including in our expectations attendance. Now, it may not be as explicit as we would like. Often we could tie it to, being where students being where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, right? Walking with purpose and getting to class on time. It's kind of a twofer in that it will potentially address attention as a whole, like being at school. You have to be on campus in order to be where you're supposed to be, but also the arriving on time hopefully can impact tardies as well, right? So including it in your matrix or having it explicitly stated in terms of expectations is a way to communicate that both to students, but also to our parents and families, right? As they are made aware of the school-wide expectations. And then we're going to talk a bit more about how we can also make sure we're acknowledging that with our students as well. And then, of course, doing a direct teach so that everyone's really clear on what we mean by our expectations. So let's kind of start by really defining what we mean when we say average daily attendance or chronic absences, right? So we tend to really focus a lot on average daily attendance, which is looking at attendance at the school level. It's a way to measure attendance at the school level, and we're looking at it typically at certain periods of time, whether it's in a 9-week period of time or at, the semester, but we're not necessarily looking at it as frequently as we might need to in order to really have effective change. When we think about chronic absenteeism, this is taking it down to the student level, where we're looking at students that are missing, 10% or more of the school year, right? So when we think about that, really 10% could be 18 days, like at least 18 days of learning or instruction that they're missing. And then here's a really key point. It's looking at excused, unexcused absences and suspensions. And so I'm going to give you a moment just to kind of think about that. So it's the excused, unexcused, and suspensions that encompass chronic absenteeism. And it's a problem nationwide. We really have not kind of returned to pre-pandemic levels in terms of absenteeism. And in some cases, it could be even as high as 30%. So when we are thinking about attendance, I would like to encourage you to think about it not just in terms of average daily attendance, but also in terms of just chronic absenteeism. And so what we're going to talk about today will hopefully help us to, again, drill it down to the student level and to really get into, again, some of the problem solving about why students might not be attending and how we can also embrace families to have to impact change when it comes to chronic absenteeism. So I loved again that you guys highlighted priority, that when we look at attendance, it really should be a whole school approach. We want to make it a priority. Administration, our principals, administrative team, kind of again, you establish as a campus that it's a priority, and we really want to think about the whole school experience, right? From the moment our kids get on the bus, right? Bus drivers can be a part of that. When we think about our PBIS framework, we could absolutely make sure that bus drivers feel they have what's needed in terms of being able to provide that positive climate, that positive environment, even on the bus, right? And we can also target safety, of course, when we're looking at buses, but thinking about an acknowledgement system that could also go to support their efforts, but also just having the great relationships with kids so that kids want to get on the bus and they want to come to school, right? It kind of even starts before kids walk through our door. And then we can also look at aligning and integrating responses to address attendance, as it might be that there's some other barriers that we can provide support with. But we can also think about, once they do arrive, making sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the protocol and documentation for attendance, that staff feel supported and that they know what to do and how to do it, and then that we are tying in possibly some professional learning to help make sure that they feel like they have the confidence and capacity to implement the strategies that we're going to suggest that they do. And again, this is keeping kind of everyone in the loop on this, whether it's paraprofessionals, our teachers, of course, and then everyone, even administratively, being kind of on the same page. It might also be that to support staff, we may need to provide even some concise and consistent scripts that they could use to communicate with families, right? Because really, it's all hands on deck when we're approaching attendance at a whole school level. And then we want to make sure that we're reviewing data and sharing that data, letting them know kind of what the issues are. And we want to be consistent in providing that so that we can keep doing the things that are working, and then also be able to pivot or be flexible if we need to make some changes. And so again, this probably looks familiar. Okay, we've got a triangle, and here we're just looking at MTSS or multi-tiered systems of support, but aligning attendance within that, right? We're already approaching academics and behavior from a tiered perspective. And so when we look at attendance, it can integrate well into that. I also just want to reference that a lot of the resources today are from attendanceworks.org. And so I'm sharing some of their resources, and I encourage you to, if you're interested, to take a deeper look. They do reference our PBIS framework. It goes hand in hand. Again, what we're sharing today is research based, and again, we just want to encourage you to look at attendance from that same lens of providing, foundational supports to all, and then looking at maybe early intervention for those students and families that might need a bit more. Again, it'll be really key that you determine what your decision rules are based upon what your data is showing in terms of absences, and then also really defining at what point a student or family may need additional supports. Is it after 2 absences, after 3? That'll largely be determined by your campus or if your district has policies related to that. And then, of course, at tier 3, we're offering more individualized intensive interventions as well. And so again, when we look at those tiered levels of support for attendance, we really want to be able to reach out to families. We want to have a way to consistently communicate with them. Of course, it starts with what we do with our students, right? We foundationally need to build relationships with our families and help them to be able to connect. Hopefully, every student has at least one adult on campus that they feel that they can connect with. And then we might even look at peer-to-peer connections as well, because if we have those strong relationships and we're providing that positive school climate and positive environment, then our students are much more likely to want to be in that setting and be in the environment and attend school. So here we have an example of an attendance pyramid. And here we look at various components that we may need to address because they might be potential barriers to our students attending regularly. We want to look at family engagement, again, establishing the positive student engagement piece. We also want to look at even the academic side, providing the level of academic support that's needed. And then we also know that often we can take it back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, looking at basic needs of our families. I was out visiting a district recently, and was impressed with seeing that they had like the clothing closet and they had a food pantry, because often some of the barriers are related to our basic needs. I'd like you to take a moment and take a look at the pyramid and just identify what stands out to you. And please type it in the chat. What stands out to you related to this attendance pyramid?
Physical and mental health at the pinnacle is what Dawn
Mhm.
said.
Yes, thank you.
Positive student engagement is a huge piece. Attendance
Yes,
strategies added to the IEP and 504.
yes, thank you.
All of the potential ways we can address attendance needs at each tier. Catherine said, I love putting it together with IEP and 504. Open door policy for students, family, and staff. Larry says, I like that it considers multiple hypotheses for why students might need support with attendance.
Gold star, we're going to touch on that in just a bit as well, that there might be multiple barriers that are impacting why students are attending or not attending, right? Okay, so again, when we talk about overcoming some of the barriers that our families and students may be experiencing. Again, it could be the food and clothing insecurities. It could be that there's some issues with transportation. And I love that you touched on that there might be multiple things. And again, it may pivot. Sometimes it may be about, again, having poor transportation or not having an additional option, like say if bus transportation isn't provided or they've missed the bus, things like that. So we may need to maybe think outside the box when it comes to addressing issues related to, like, say, transportation. It could also be that, we've got, just certain mindsets, again, bringing it back to the connectedness piece too. No one notices if I'm not here, or it's just one day or 1 week, right? Like going on vacation for a week right in the middle of the school year, but they think, oh, I can just recoup that, right? We can, try to, again, have discussions. And as we have those relationships established with families, maybe again, in our communication, communicating regularly how much learning time they're actually missing or losing when they're not there, right? And then it could be like there are some other physical or mental health barriers going on as well. And then we don't often like to harp on it, but we need to make sure that we are providing the engaging instruction so that kids aren't saying or thinking, oh, I can just Google that, right? Like they're missing out on something if they're not there, right? They're hopefully we've got engaging learning going on. They've got really good peer-to-peer relationships. They feel like they'll be missed, and and they're excited about the learning as as we're providing it. So these are just some of the potential barriers to consider, and then we're going to continue the discussion and talk about some potential interventions as well.
And I just want to jump in here too, especially with that the habitual mindset part, really thinking of our secondary schools for sure, right? Some of those larger, bigger campuses that, it's just one day or no one notices. A lot of your students, simple, quick surveys could help get some of that feedback from your students to see what do they think of attendance. Do they think that it's important that they need to be there each day to see what some of those barriers are? And then Christy, I do see some things going up in the chat. Are there any questions that we should pause and address, or is it just comments from our last chat engagement?
No questions. It was part of the last chat engagement. Catherine did add that the outside factors that we have no control over are sometimes the hardest to overcome: transportation, students living with other families, deaths in families, etc.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank
absolutely.
you so much.
And so again, when we try to drill it down to answering the question of what causes students to miss school, we've kind of discussed some of the potential barriers, but then we can also look at some of the potential solutions. And just as you said, some things seem a bit more outside of our locus of control than other things, but the things that are within our control, like providing the challenging, engaging instruction, again, helping students to build and form great peer relationships, and also building their relationships with students. We can be very intentional with that. Again, also just having a better just understanding of how our students are feeling, as Lauren said, maybe by conducting surveys, or just finding opportunities for kids and families to provide their perspective on things, so that we can keep doing those things that are meeting their needs. And then if there are other things that maybe we're not even aware of, as we're made aware of them, then it gives us an opportunity to address some of the needs. And so again, when it comes to research, these are the strategies that we know work in reducing chronic absenteeism. So again, looking at reducing barriers, improving the overall student experience, again, having them have that sense of belonging and the positive family relationships with the school that can be effective. And keep in mind, everyone's bringing their own learning histories to the table, right? Even the parents, grandparents, and more recently great grandparents that might be serving as caregivers, for our students. They all have had some level of experience with school, and so keeping that in mind, so we have opportunities to develop, build, or rebuild relationships along the way and establish that positive school climate that we're striving for. And then also just keeping in mind that we're approaching attendance just as we approach other elements of the framework. The focus is on prevention and early intervention. So really understanding why students are absent is key. And so when we look at, possibly aligning our interventions to the reason for the absences, here are just some examples that we might consider. Again, like with the transportation barriers, even though, we may feel like it's more limited in how we can respond, these are just some of the suggestions of possible interventions that have been put in place, whether it's, some type of carpool or a walking school bus where it's groups of students walking to school, possibly with an adult. Again, these are ideas. Some of it is outside the box. It could also be that, there are free bus passes that are provided. That's just kind of one area in terms of addressing the transportation barriers. But again, with disengagement, we could again look at how we can try to facilitate building relationships, whether it's, having a peer mentor group established. Again, just some ideas to consider. But the key thing here is to align our possible interventions with the reason for the absence, just as we would when we're aligning our possible interventions for any other behavior. It needs to match, right? So some potential next steps, again, keeping in mind that relationships are fundamental, that we really want to make sure that we are establishing or reestablishing them again, not just with staff to student, but also looking at the peer relationships as well, address any of the practical barriers that we can, and keep in mind that it may not be that we have the solutions, but we may also want to partner with community groups or agencies as well. And then we want to make sure that we are reviewing and sharing data in a timely manner, and that we are also providing acknowledgement, recognition, and reinforcement for them attending. And I'd also like to encourage everyone to think of it not necessarily just in terms of perfect attendance, but also in improvement. So we've touched on the importance of encouraging our families to work together with us, that we can hopefully make attendance a priority for them as well, making them aware of the protocols and the documentation piece. And so again, that they're really clear, we give concrete decision rules. Our goal is to have 0 absences, but certainly no more than 2 or 3 or whatever the specifics may be. Again, in the spirit of having really effective, positive communication with our families, maybe providing a script for calling home could be helpful. And then getting the student and family perspectives on things, asking them, how we're doing, how could we help, looking at the things that we do have in place, and even just creating awareness, because they may not even be aware of some of the resources that we have available that could be provided.
And I'm just going to pause here too and kind of ask you as a group, what are some things that maybe you've done already in your districts and schools that are ways that you've been able to include families, or even look at overcoming any of the barriers to this point? I know of one district that I work with that started giving family incentives when they attend after school events like the open house sessions and things like that. So if you take a minute, just kind of type in the chat, what are some ways to kind of share among the group?
Guys, as people are typing, Lauren said, I think that's one of the biggest issues. Sometimes it is completely out of the student's hands and is the parent's responsibility and they are not taking responsibility for that. I think the scripts to help support those difficult calls would be amazing.
Okay, we're on it. Thank you.
And parents, I will speak as a parent myself, right? Parent behavior can also be something that we can. It is definitely a barrier, but it is something that we can also work to overcome. I've shared this example before where um, my son's school was specifically targeting tardies. He's in elementary school, so he relies on me to get him to school on time. I struggle with punctuality as a human in my life, but I'm working on it. So he was one of those kiddos that unfortunately was kind of tardy. 1 minute, 2 minutes, like we were so close. But what they did school wide, not just for my family, but it was a school wide problem, was they did a specific monthly challenge of the classroom with the least percentage of tardies for the month of March. They would win like a special shout out and spirit stick. And I believe they even got like a 1 minute dance like party at the pep rally. And my child was not tardy a single day in the month of March because it was important to him. So he came home and made it important to me. And then therefore, like, he was on time the whole month. So we can build some incentives that will also help trickle down to the families as well. Chrissy, did anything else come up in the chat with some other ideas?
Rebecca said, we have been brainstorming ideas for parent incentives versus just student incentives, like preferred parking or going to the front of the car
Ooh.
rider line. Ooh, good one.
That is a
Drawings
fabulous
Great.
for
idea.
donated grocery gift cards, etc. I love
I
this.
I love being able to skip the car line.
Those sound great. And you might even ask your families, like do some type of really brief survey, whether you do it electronically or however your families prefer to receive the communication. Just get a little bit of feedback. But those all sound wonderful.
Harry said family breakfast on Thursdays, family lunch one Monday a month builds relationships. Um, there was a question of if there were pre-made notes to send to families, like your student is coming close to X amount of absences, let's work together, etc. Um, Carrie said prizes on family nights, baked goods, food baskets, gift cards. And then Kat shared that Attendance Works has some nice handouts on impacts of attendance as well. So thanks for sharing that, Kat.
Great. Thank you. And so we'll segue to talking more about acknowledgement and reinforcement. And again, just like with any other behavior, we want to acknowledge the behaviors that you'd like to see more of, right? And encourage those behaviors, try to strengthen them. And we need to provide timely feedback on attendance data. We need to get the information out to staff and students, right? And we need to do it regularly so that we can hopefully have an impact and actually change behavior, right? So we want to acknowledge not just perfect attendance, but improved attendance, especially when we're looking at our kids that may be approaching, chronic absenteeism levels. We really want to acknowledge incremental change as well, and then again blend our acknowledgement, rewards, and incentives into what we're doing for PBIS as a whole. It doesn't have to be in its own silo. We can absolutely integrate it into what we're doing under the PBIS framework, especially if we already have it. As an expectation, right? And we're doing direct teaches on that. And then we can provide the acknowledgement and reinforcement. Again, it may be that we have some reinforcement that's happening, systematically at a 9-week grading period or something, but then we also need to have something a bit more regularly or frequently as we're trying to impact that behavior. So again, we'll talk about that as we think about tiering it, right? We can have the things that are in place for all, then those that we deem to need more early intervention have a bit more, and then for the more intensive to individualize that a bit more.
And just to kind of jump in with what Sabrina's saying here with blending your PBIS incentives with attendance, it doesn't have to be that there's a specific attendance reward. Like Sabrina mentioned, you might have a every 9 weeks scheduled or monthly behavior incentive, you could have some more pop-up type of incentives that, maybe any kid with 2 or 3 Diamondback dollars, that class gets an extra 2 minutes at recess, or whatever it might be that would work as a pop-up incentive at your school. That will naturally help build some engagement within the school, because if they don't know when the event might happen, right, there's going to be that fear of missing out if they're not at school that day. Some schools like to do as well, like a drop everything and reward. So they might have, again, just random surprise incentives that every student with their lanyard on, or every student that was on time for, third period today gets an extra, Diamondback dollar or PBIS buck. So building those little bits of excitement, even though they're still behavior targeted, will, kind of twofold with attendance, to hit those kids if they don't want to like miss what might be happening.
That's excellent, Lauren. Thank you. And here's some additional examples of ways that that schools are incentivizing attendance. In the first example there, it's at a primary school, and they're looking at it both daily, weekly, and quarterly. And so initially, they're initially looking at it still at the school or classroom level in tracking attendance and celebrating the percentages of students that are present. But then when we start to look at the weekly and the quarterly, we're drilling it down just a bit more, and even getting to just various classes that are being acknowledged with a popcorn party. And then at the quarterly piece, I especially would like to draw your attention to the students with 4 or less absences are invited to attend a celebration. So again, not necessarily focusing just on perfection, but improvement. Because especially if we've got, kiddos that are missing a lot of learning, we incrementally just want to increase their time at school. And so acknowledging all progress is encouraged. And then some other examples of having like a bulletin board that addresses attendance. Again, it's there by grade level. It could be that, especially at the high school level, secondary level, that there could be VIP parking, and the students are able to even draw or design a special parking spot. Maybe you've got 10 parking spots set aside for both perfect and improved attendance as well. And these are just some ideas of ways that you can acknowledge attendance. And then, as Lauren mentioned, having those pop-up attendance reinforcers, that could be at the tier 1 level, and then at tier 2, again, maybe even coming up with like a group that might be kind of experiencing similar challenges as to the barriers to attending, and coming up with attendance check-ins that are done periodically, maybe just per week. And so you're looking at acknowledging and reinforcing again at a higher rate if you're looking at it on a weekly basis. And then at a tier 3 level where it's more individualized, having some type of attendance contract with daily check-ins to progress monitor and to also provide reinforcement for those students. And just some other tips and considerations is really make sure that we're getting information, or we're getting feedback from our students and their families. And again, we want to encourage them to, again, treat attendance as a priority, and sometimes having like a parent cafe where there's an opportunity to have conversations and share expectations, and again, recognition of students that are meeting attendance expectations. All of that can be done with families as well. Again, we can also try to establish like a small group or a small focus group, maybe even with an already established student organization, to get feedback, more direct feedback from students, and then to make sure that we are asking about attendance and absences specifically in our surveys to parents and students. And then also just talking with students about building relationships as well, and getting feedback and ideas about connecting. So
before we wrap up, Sabrina, I was just putting an option in the chat for people to put some ideas in the chat of what they've
Oh,
tried at their
absolutely.
school.
Absolutely. Please do. Absolutely. Thank you.
Carrie
Oh,
says
coffee chat with
coffee
the
chat
principal.
like that.
Yes. Awesome.
Is that I'm assuming that's for parents.
Some kids might like
I
that
mean,
too, but high schoolers.
could
I
be
would have liked
secondary.
Carrie says yes.
Mm.
I love the accessibility of that. It also builds the connection with the school. That's a great idea, Carrie.
Right. So when we think about attendance, again, it should be addressed through the 10 PBIS critical elements and new enhancements. And that's to say that it doesn't need to be something separate, right? We include it in our expectations, recognition system. Also, again, when we are looking at data, it should be one of the areas that we're looking at and sharing with staff, again, just to create awareness and then to identify if it's an issue or not. And so again, the Tier 1 team can really help support attendance by helping to integrate it into all of these systems. And again, let's keep trying to work smarter and not harder by blending teams. Again, getting the benefit of the leadership on the campus that's already addressing behavior and possibly even academics, and looking at attendance within that team can be really, really helpful, and another way to work smarter and not harder.
Christy, did some other ideas get shared in the chat?
Yes, Karen says we started a critter coin program and have coins for attendance as well as being on time.
Awesome. Critter coin. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And I'm hoping you can see that I just launched the survey for today's chat, which was amazing, by the way. You ladies did such a good job. And I'll give you guys a few minutes to finish up, but I wanted to let you know that the survey is up and we would love your feedback on today's chat. Oh, I do want to say one more thing. It's kind of a dad joke, but usually we have like 60% around of people that register that actually attend the chat. But today it looks like 100% of people who registered attended. So our attendance for the attendance chat was spot on.
That's excellent.
That is amazing.
That is wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Yes, we do appreciate all of the feedback that we get in the spirit of continuous improvement. And we also just wanted to have an intentional close today that would allow us also to get get some more feedback from you. So with the intentional close, if you could complete the sentence, at first I thought, but now I know. So reflecting on today's learning, at first I thought, but now I know. And if you could type your response in the chat, please.
Brooke said, I worked at a school that started a STAR, Students at Risk program, that was matching students up with staff who they would greet daily, try and have lunch with at least once a week, etc. We matched greetings with where students were arriving based on the adult's morning duty. It was fairly low effort, but ensured each of our students who were at risk had a person who was checking on them. That's a great idea.
A lot of times it just takes one person to make school important for that kiddo.
Absolutely.
Dawn said, at first I thought this might not be worth the time, but now I know it totally was.
Thank you for your candor, and we're so happy that it was.
Larry said, at first I thought attendance was separate than PBIS, but now I know attendance can be integrated into school-wide expectations. Karen said, at first I thought attendance may not be as big of an issue everywhere, but now I know that it is. John said, at first I thought, but now I know other schools are using PBIS points for attendance. Catherine, at first I thought it was just the registrar's responsibility for attendance, but now I know that it is all of the adults in the building that can support this and be a part of PBIS too. Rebecca said, at first I thought there could be better ways to address attendance within our tiered approach, but now I know specific ideas for each tier. All of these are great. It's jumping. My eyes are jumping. At first, I thought my school had strong PBIS reward system, and now I know we can improve by targeting attendance. That's excellent. Some ideas to increase our kiddos who walk without parents. A walking school bus is a cool idea here on Beachside. Also love the pop-up incentive ideas for an entire class being present. She loved the spontaneity of that. At first, I thought improving elementary attendance was difficult, but now I have some ideas on how to improve a variety, or excuse me, of how to provide a variety of new incentives to help, and it has helped me connect PBIS to attendance.
That's great.
Now I know including attendance in our PBIS system is a must for a student success. Now I know great strategies for incentivizing attendance. Oh, I like this one. At first, I thought attendance was a losing battle, but now I know I have some new ideas to share with my district.
Great. Thank you guys so much for all of the thoughtful feedback. Thank you.